So quiet on the mic. Thanks. Is that good? Testing, testing. Meg Martin, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Does this need to go? Yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you, everybody. We are live streaming if it gets too crowded in here. We are also live streaming in the front conference room. But I don't want to take away from our wonderful panel, but I do want to my name is Brian Kemp, and I'm the operating principal here at Keller Williams Capital Partners. And I would just like to make a quick announcement. Those of you who are in the Market Center or at our office meeting knew that we were putting some final touches on hiring our team leader, and I would just like to make an announcement this morning that we have made that official, and welcome to Kim Buckner.
Good.
Kim, for those of you who don't know Kim, she was a team leader in Lexington, Kentucky, and then in Chicago, in a suburb outside of Chicago, and we lured her to Columbus.
He really means that.
Yeah.
That is a real word.
Lured.
Yeah. But I have a feeling most of you in this room know Brian Kemp and know that he generally gets whatever it is he's going after. So it's not real easy. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I'm going to give this. I'll start it down at this end because I've been asked tonight. So I'm just going to set this right here and you all can fight over that. How about it? So thank you guys for coming today. We're so happy. We have a couple of, is it down? Is it high? Is it? I mean, I really don't feel like I need it at all. Okay, good. So glad you all are here today. We thought it would be a really phenomenal idea with the time of year, with listings. It's always, I feel like the thing that we're all going after is to, whether it's increasing our personal inventory, making sure that our area is strong and healthy listing wise. So we wanted to get some of the best together, and we're very grateful that you all have chosen to take your time and agreed to come here. I don't twist arms like Brian Kemp does, so they truly are here at their own will and desire. So thank you all. Lisa Gibbs. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to get started, and we just have a few questions here. If there's anything in particular that you all, we'll stop every few minutes or so. So if there's something we aren't asking that you all would like to know or want to hear, please feel free to just raise your hand, let us know, and we will get on that. So anybody can take this. Are you all like, let me pick the hardest question. But no, really, let's just start out very basically. What are the basics that make you thrive in your business? What do you feel like are the characteristics that you have to have before we get specifically into listings, just as being someone that qualifies to be sitting at this table? What do you feel like are the basics that make you thrive to get here? And don't everybody answer at once. Cynthia, you have the mic.
I mean, obviously, we're all the same in this industry, so I would say adaptability. Joanne Labuda once told me that it's like the devil's always nipping at my heels. I think satisfaction is something that puts us in a very temporary standing, whereas if you're not satisfied, you keep striving for more and keep going. So that's kind of my mentality in terms of enough is never enough and going for more.
Lisa?
Thanks, Jeff. I would have to say learning and continuing to learn. It's a constant challenge to keep yourself up to date in what's going on in this industry, and things are always shifting. So if you stay on top of it with education, you'll be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. At least that's what I'm told.
While you have that microphone, would you mind just, we'll do a quick rundown of just introducing yourself and where you are. If you all choose to share what your volume was last year, or if you focus on listings, that type of thing.
Most of my business came 50% from buyers, 50% from listings. I worked for the Raines Group, as all of you know. I'm now here at Keller Williams. My third week here. So it's been very interesting to see the dynamics of everything that goes on somewhere totally different, because I was at the Range Group for 16 and a half years. Last year's production was pretty close to 15 million, just slightly under. So, yeah.
I'm Jeff Mahler. I'm with the Capital Partners Office. I've been in the business 13 years. I'm an individual agent. My business last year was 60% listings, 40% buyers, and I did 31 million in production.
My name is Cynthia McKenzie with Keller Williams and the CIMAC Group, Keller Williams Capital Partners specifically. Yeah. So anyway, I was turned in on a radio show for not saying Keller Williams Capital Partners to the division once. So very sensitive to that. Last year, our team did 65 million in production, about 201 units, and almost 50-50.
Hi, Lori Lynn, Keller Williams Consultants Realty. Yes. So I have been in the business since 2002, got my license on Halloween of 2002. Our team, we ended up about 260 closed units for the year. We're about 40% listing, 60% buy. What we were talking about is, I don't know if you wanted me to answer about what makes us thrive.
Yeah,
at the same
absolutely.
time.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Mhm.
So for me, it has always been consistency and staying on course. And we're always getting pulled in different directions, like squirrel, here, this, try this, try this. And so what we started doing about 8 years ago is I said, all right, we are not making any changes in our marketing plan until we have our business planning in November of every year. That way we can evaluate. Now, if there's something in the market that's changing so significantly that we feel that we need to change our farm area or the marketing that we're doing, then yes, we will evaluate that. But staying on course and not always looking at that silver shiny quarter, it to me is the most important things. We have very solid systems and we're very focused on what we're doing. Because we're so consistent, the vendors that we work with know exactly what to expect.
Thank you.
Okay, those are hard acts to follow, but my name is Katie Davis Spence with Keller Williams Classic Properties, and I've been in the business 12 years, a little over 12 years. Last year was my first full year with a team, so a bit of a building and getting that systems in place year. We did about 25 million and 75 units, and a third of that was listing. So fairly younger, so I'm starting to have more listings where I'm selling people's first homes and then they're going to buy it. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I would say the basics that make me thrive is I'm very type A, which could be a bad thing, but I'm very detail oriented, cross my T's, dot my I's. I think that's very important, and it's very good to just be thorough in all our conversations and everything that we do. And as you'll probably hear later in some of the questions that we're answering, my basics that make me thrive are just I'm a relationship person, and I really enjoy building and maintaining relationships, which has kind of gotten me to be where I am today. Thank you.
Nice, thanks.
Julie Wills with Keller Williams Excel Realty. Like Lisa, came from the Rains Group, left that team at the end of 2016, so I'm also a new team. I've only had my team for 3 years. Actually went down in production in 2019, came to Keller Williams in May, stepped out of production completely and went into leadership. Realized that that may have been a fail forward for me and stepped right back into production. So in 2018, we hover around, since my team's inception, around 100 units for around 25 million. Last year, down to about 22, stepping out of production. The basics for me, I also am extremely detail-oriented, very DC personality. So I like to be very proactive versus reactive. I'm extremely communicative. If my team hears me say one more time, close your loops and communicate, they will probably throw something against a wall. But I think just mastering my mornings for me personally, and again, I'm just very driven. What's next? What can we do better? How can we change that system? What policy can we put in place? Let's streamline it and simplify it. And I think always it's going back to the basics too.
For sure. For sure. Thank you. Okay, so when a potential client is interviewing you for a listing, what are some of the things that you offer or bring to the table or say or do that set you apart to make them choose you over other agents?
In terms of what we do, or what I do personally with kind of cutting the fat in the process, I think I'll just kind of take a macro question, put it into a micro.
Okay.
A tip that's been working for me really well right now is that I get strapped for time for listing consultations. I try and make it a systematic approach in terms of my schedule. For example, I've got 3 appointments for listings on Saturday and I'm just stretched. And I just got a past client that called me that lives in an Arlington condo that had to meet with me by Saturday. So what I do now is basically do video chats over the phone. I've already been in this unit. She bought it 3 years ago. In terms of the upgrades that she's done to the property, it wasn't anything significant. She's a single girl that is very tidy, so I know that we're not gonna have a smells issue. She doesn't have pets. So essentially speaking, I did my whole listing consultation with her over the phone so that I could eliminate having to do that listing appointment and take 2 hours out of my day. A big thing for listing consults, when people call me before the appointments, I'm having them do your top 10 photos. So give me top 10 pictures of significant upgrades that you've done to your property or anything that you feel is a showstopper with your house. And then send me your upgrades list and then obviously the financials in terms of what you've done. So for me, I can cut out that whole show and tell portion of my listing appointments when I go in. And then we just get to the numbers, we get to the marketing portfolio, and we get to why work with me. And it's just very streamlined and easy, and it cuts the whole fat.
Do you also find that from doing that ahead of time, that it creates kind of a sticky factor of, even though they're talking to 10 other agents, you're the one that asks them for these things? They're kind of doing homework assignments specific to you. Does
So
that
I
help?
started doing this last year in order for me to get the numbers that I wanted to. And literally every single person that called me said, you were the only agent that's asked that question.
Nice.
So anyone else?
Lori.
To follow up on what Jeff said, I do ask the question, if you were going to stay for another 2 to 5 years, what would your next project be? And that helps me know where they feel work needs to be done to their house. And I try to have a phone conversation as well. I don't video chat. That was
phone conversations are good though. We can
But-
go through the walls.
we can. Oh my God. Linda? Where's Linda? But trying to get it down to closer to an hour from an hour and a half, but sometimes that's not possible. There's a lot to do at a listing appointment. So I've lost what the question was.
No, that was it. It's like, what is your specific value proposition? Why do they pick you?
You know, I think past success, I usually do touch on that. Talking about what their goals are, because with their goals might not be my goals. My goals, quick sale, high sale, sometimes sale for prep for sale to get the most value, but sometimes they don't want to do that. So it's their decision. So I think really listening to what their goal is, and just I like my team. I think we bring a lot to the table.
Well, you do. And in saying that, just because I feel like I know your personality enough to know that you're not going in there saying, we sold, right?
Yeah.
So how do you go about that? You want them to know about your past success, but how do you handle that to, kind of the humble brag to help them know they're in good hands? It's not about your ego. It's about what you're capable of doing for them.
Right. I generally ask a question that probably everyone here does. How are you going to make your decision if we're competing? And they'll usually bring it up if that's important to them. But to your point, sometimes they could care less. All they care about is what you will do for them.
Mhm.
And so if you get off on a tangent that we're so great, we sell 200 houses, they're like, we're going to get lost in the shuffle. So I think really communicating and knowing who you're talking to can be very helpful.
Do you do any recon beforehand?
Depends on how much time we have. But yes, I like to know more than less. And I always have comparables with me always have sales data with me, but sometimes I'll go to a house and I'm like, oh, I have no idea what this house is worth, and I hope I can't get back. I don't want to get backed into a corner talking value quite yet, but
Okay, thanks.
For me, I think I do things probably a little bit differently. I obviously bring the research, so I know how long they've been there, just some basic data. And then the very first thing that I do is when I walk to the front door, I've got my iPad and I loop around the house and make notes. Like, it looks like the roof is newer. We need to have this power washed. We need this gutter is not connected, or downspout's not connected. Any maintenance things, and really by the exterior, you can probably tell what's going to happen when you enter the house. So 95% of the time, they see me out there walking around the house, which most agents don't do. And so by the time I get to the front door, I make it more, not necessarily so much about a business appointment where I'm going to walk in with, you know, a computer and do a PowerPoint presentation. When I come in, I present myself as, this is what I know about the house. This is what I know about the neighborhood. I really don't talk about anything about myself, very, very little. I focus more on them, the upgrades that they've done to the house. If my appointment's at 1, I would say 96% of the time I am out at 2, 1 hour in and out. I generally, I'm just so focused on their house, and I will say to them things like, okay, I'll have a brief conversation about, you know, are they capable of doing some of these things? Do they need help? And let's face it, we can figure that out pretty quickly. And then I'll say, all right, well, I have a handyman. This is his phone number. These are the things that he can do. This is a few things with the home inspection. Here are some things that I know are going to be a problem with the home inspection.
So basically setting expectations.
Setting the expectation. So I think what happens is the reason that my success rate at listings is high is because I feel like I'm a little bit different than what the norm is. When I go in, I'm like, all right, here's your house. What are we going to do? What do we need to do? And by the time I leave, they're like, okay, so are you going to send your guy over, or do I need to call him? So I would say a value proposition is the feeling that I give them is that we're in this together and that I'm confident about the area. When I first started listing, if I did not get a listing, I would send them a letter and say, self-addressed envelope, could you please just give me an idea of what maybe, what I could have done better? And it was interesting because when a lot of times when realtors take information, they might be using a neighborhood that's an MI neighborhood and competing against an MI showcase neighborhood. Well, those are two totally different houses. So very quickly, I learned, okay, wait a second. When I walk in, I better know what I'm talking about. And I will say, in case you talk to other realtors, it's important to know that the comps that I used are truly the most comparable to your house. Some realtors may take the general area, but they might not include the same value of house that we're in.
Thank you.
As I said earlier, I'm slowly getting more and more listening, so I'm taking a lot of notes from these professionals. But anyhow, I would say that my value proposition with listings is pricing strategy and my honesty, and that I'm very direct. I won't take overpriced listings. I think you are doing a disservice to the client. You need to tell them dollar in doesn't necessarily mean dollar out. It doesn't matter what your neighbor's house 3 doors down sold for. It's a holistic, you got to look at the whole approach. And it's just your initial listing price is going to dictate how long your home's on the market. So we know we're all busy. We all want to get this sold. That's why we're there, and that's what they want us to do. So just being direct up front. So that kind of goes with the pricing and the honesty. Someone said a while back, you want to price your home to be not just on the market, to be in the market. So I always use that, this is where you need to be priced to really be in the market and not just a listing on the market. And that's why you've called me to come, consult with you. So another thing I would say is, somebody told me this a while ago and I've tried to do it, but you always want to make sure when going on a listing appointment, I feel that both parties are there. Last year, I lost a $900,000 listing in Arlington. I went and I asked if they'd both be there. The lady was there. She said, "Oh, my husband can't come now." They called me, they met with 4 agents, I got the listing, and then they wanted to circle back and have a meeting to come to terms with the details. They were not on the same terms at all. I ended up losing the listing, I left, and they said, we weren't comfortable. Well, I wasn't either, because they clearly, So anyways, just always try and make sure, because they weren't on the same page and they weren't in the same mindset. And then I was kind of in between this couple. So always try and make sure all parties are there so everyone's on the same page and it's the best use of everyone's time.
Very good call.
I would mirror and mimic just about what everybody said. And I think at the end of the day, again, I'm a big proactive versus reactive. So we always over prepare on the initial phone call. I always ask a definitive amount of questions. I send a seller guide to them confirming the appointment. It acclimates them to myself, my team, and how we're going to be a complement to their journey. When I'm at the appointment, some things that I say to them to make them understand the goal we're trying to achieve is at the end of the day, and I say this every time to buyers and sellers without question, is at the end of the day, my team and myself are in charge of information and process, and you're in charge of decisions. We're here to provide you with information and process and guide you to the best decision, but it is your home, it is your decision. I'm never going to pigeonhole you into a decision, but if I think you're making a wrong one, my job is to tell you, right? And along with that, things that we talk about too, and I think honesty and transparency and guiding them, at the end of the day, a lot of agents will take your listing on any price, any terms, any conditions. However, we don't list to sit, we list to sell, right? So what can I do to achieve, to net you the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time? I always ask them, each of them, what are their 3 best experiences or 3 worst experiences that they've had when working with an agent. I don't like to talk about who I'm competing with. I don't care. I want to know what is important to them and how I can be a complement to that journey. I also talk about not just listing the home, but the process behind that. And no offense, but I'll say things like a monkey can put a home in contract. Right? But it takes someone with seasoning and wisdom to guide you through inspections and remedies and all the things that we're going to come up against. So again, if I say it ad nauseum to them, proactive versus reactive, right?
Very true. And so back to what Katie was saying about the value of their home. What type of value proposition would that be for your sphere if you were to give them a call once a year to remind them of what the value was in their specific neighborhood and to ask them if they were going to be doing any updates, upgrades, rehab to their home, and that you just wanted to make sure you were protecting their investment and letting them know the parameters that they need to stay within. So just, on that, let's think a little bit outside the box of some of these things, because then how much easier does that make your job when you show up to actually list their home, right? That they haven't, like she said, the dollar in, dollar out, that they haven't surpassed that. So thank you. That's very good. Very good. So before we move on to another question, anybody want to go deeper on anything or have something specific? Eric?
You started to go into, I think, what is a 1-step versus a 2-step listing process. So you're always prepared. I guess if you walk into a 1,300 square foot ranch in Colonial Hills to say, here's the price. But if you go to something that's unusual, so do you set that expectation up front that I may or may not discuss value? And I do the same sometimes. I mean, you get there, you don't know what it is. You say, I really want to do some research, and I'll be following up with you, right? So we can hone in on price. But how do you, maybe whoever else, how do you handle that if you get to a house and really don't know what the value is?
For you all in the back, if could everybody hear him? Okay, good. Go ahead, Cynthia. Sorry. Or whoever.
So obviously it's much easier if it's crystal clear, if it's in Lewis Center and it's all around the same price. But also sometimes when a seller has an unrealistic value, and just from conversation, we've had some talk and I'm like, they're thinking 300, I'm thinking 250 or something like that. Then I really try to
to get them into the office to say, hey, let's sit around the computer together. I'll have the MLS on the big screens and I'll review what I prepare for you. And that has been wonderful because there's a lot of ahas, like they get, oh, my house doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Just because we were a neighbor. So that would be someone who's really struggling. So I think it's just different every time. I don't always go, I want to go to your house twice. Right.
Sure.
Agreed.
I've had appraisers actually go out to houses and do a full appraisal. And, you know, for anywhere from $300 to $500, they're going to know exactly what the new square footage is if they've added an addition, or if they're, you know, if they're really wanting to push the market. It's just simpler to have a third party come in and say, yeah, no, it's $750.
Yeah.
Yeah.
$900.
You know what, and
Well, go ahead.
At the end of the day, it's a conversation, right? So saying things like, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, I don't price your home and you don't price your home. The market is going to price your home. So it's about just having a conversation with that person. You know, ultimately, I over research before I walk into someone's home. I know those stats from the whole MLS down to the county, down to the school district, down to their neighborhood price per square foot. Again, telling them I'm not going to pigeonhole you into price per square foot, but it's our baseline because ultimately we have to sell your home twice. We have to sell it to a buyer and we have to sell it to a buyer's lender. So where do we fit into that, right? So I have a range when I walk in like everybody else, but then it's a conversation that I can easily say, I need to do a little bit more due diligence, but let's talk about what we need to do to present your home to market properly.
The other thing that I have noticed as well, how many times have you gone on a listing presentation, you give information, and then all of a sudden what they say back to you? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. This is a great team leader we got going on over here. I had trouble in school when I was actually in a class where my professor was completely all auditory and I was not obtaining information correctly. So my biggest thing because I went to go see someone about this and she's like, you're completely visual and your mind is like a racehorse and you're not getting what an auditory person is providing you. So I took that nugget of when I thought I was special back in college to figure out that that's what I need to do before I go on any listing consultation is how are you obtaining information? Do you see more in pictures or do you see more of just a numbers or analytical person? And so I used to have for like, I would say 10 years, the standard black and white listing consult, and that's what I would do for everything. And then 3 years ago, I completely revamped it and now just base it off of how someone obtains the information. I can tell you right there, price obviously is everything, but how someone obtains information, it really makes this process so much easier because there is no ifs, ands, or buts, or there isn't someone saying, but you said my house was worth this. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, no, I did not. We're actually having the right conversation and it is going to them. So with my listing presentation, I can spread it out to how someone really obtains information. You know, if it's analytical, I'm going to hit those stats real good. And kind of just go all verbal with the appointment, not, okay, well, this house had granite and this house did not. Visuals, I think MLS, since they have added a little few more resources for us to use, it's just so much easier for those type of visual people where I can put a quick CMA together with just the visuals and then the price at the bottom, and we can kind of hit it in terms of condition or in terms of upgrade level and those type of things. So that really transformed my statistics. I think I was getting 90% of my listings once I switched my listing presentation in terms of kind of adapting towards the consumer versus them adapting towards what I present.
So to that point, because both of you talked about visuals, so one of the pieces, I think today so many people do things on their phone, so be mindful that the mobile app that you all are about to get that is coming out soon. I think we can say now it's coming out at Family Reunion. I know, right? but the piece of that that's going to be is when you say you're going to be able, your client will now have that app on their phone and the comparables from the MLS. So just like Cynthia said, she pulls those up on the screen, or Jeff said, I make sure I have pictures. Well, now that's going to be on their phone. So all the comparables are going to pop up there. It's going to show the backyard. Is your yard better or worse than this yard? And they choose it. Is your front door nicer or worse than this front door? And they choose it. Is your bedroom, right? And they get to choose. And so basically they've already done a little bit of an analysis and they have that aha before you even show up to the door now. Right. So it is. It's certainly the power of self-discovery. So just, that's huge. how people intake information and having visuals prepared. So that's just one more thing that's going to help make your job a little bit easier. Did anybody else have another question before we dive into the next? Is this good? Everybody getting a few things? Have you learned anything so far? Good. Good. What, Darcy, and then Gwen.
Just really quick,
Mhm.
do you ask that question in more of a visual person prior to meeting them so you can set the expectations?
So the questions were, when I say, and you pick an object, how do you obtain that information? What's best for you? Sometimes people are like, well, I need a visual, or other people are like, well, if we talk about it more, then I know that that's what we can do. And it's difficult. It's not just a one question thing, but in terms of what is the best presentation that I can give you in terms of what will help you gain the knowledge, they usually have specifics in terms of what they're looking for. And then you just kind of configure it out in terms of what you provide to give them more of that. Kim, the last thing I was going to say real quick is, in a low inventory market, it's a little bit more of a challenge, but in certain subdivisions where there's a little bit more saturation, probably about 20 minutes before my listing appointment, where I know just based off of the phone conversation about the consult that this is going to be a price battle from day one. I have them come in my car and we go look at houses before I even, and that's old school. I mean, back in the day when there was a ton of inventory, you could do that. But I'm doing that to my challenging people, and then I have them make a list of per house 5 things that they liked and didn't like about that. And then we go back to looking at their house and kind of mix and match. I've had more of an ease with pricing than I have a battle with pricing when I started doing that as well. So it's a case by case basis, but you got to have some options versus this is just what I think your property is worth, because I mean, we all are offering that opinion. Can someone get this away from me, please?
Would you rather have the other one?
I don't want any of them.
Let me pick one.
Okay, so what is your, do you have any tips on, do you ever try to leverage existing listings to get new listings? Do you ever find that you're able to pick up new listings from existing ones? How do you do that? Or how does that work for you?
Well, I think it goes back to open houses, like when you're getting ready to do an open house or you've got a coming soon sign in the yard. The easiest thing to do is to ask your seller for the neighborhood directory, and just call around the neighborhood, because usually what happens is 1 to 2 people will eventually sell their house.
Well, one slide goes up in the neighborhood, 3 more will pop up.
Right. Right. That's very good. What else?
I mean, this is a popular one I think a lot of people have caught on to, but I do for certain neighborhoods, not all of them. Sometimes it's just like, hey, go do an open house and it's Wednesday. And you're like, great. What I've been doing is just an hour before the open house, if I know it's going to be a lot of nosy neighbors or it's a neighborhood that turns over 2 to 3 years, then I send out a quick marketing blast for direct mailers specifically towards those who've been in their house like 5 to 7 years, if it's that turn of a neighborhood. Because, I mean, the numbers kind of don't lie. People are going to move eventually. But have them come through for a preview prior to, and then I make them sign in, and then I say that I'll send them a pre-list consultation packet. About 2 years ago, I had a huge success rate with it, and I got, I think it was close to 17 listings because I did it for every single open house. And that was when I was trying to take my listing volume from like a 70 unit production to like a 100 unit production. And in order to do that, I kind of just had to put in additional legwork, even if they were near selling or not. It just kind of worked. And let's face it, we have to get there 30 minutes early to go truck those signs out to the corner anyway. So it really wasn't that big of a deal.
Thanks.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else?
I can speak to that.
Yes.
Just because it's on our team business plan this year. So it's something we have only done twice, had amazing success at it though. So as a team, we decided that we were going to be very purposeful about circle prospecting around every listing. So we are listing our homes on Wednesday, door knocking the entire neighborhood as a team on Thursday, doing a Rainmaker private open house. We're inviting them during that door knock to a Rainmaker private open house event an hour and a half before the open house, which we are doing a catered food truck for. And then the public open house, when I leave the open house for the neighborhood Rainmaker portion, and by the way, I got this idea from a mastermind at Mega Camp. When I leave that open house, I'm immediately putting thank you cards in the mail because I'm making a mental note of the neighbors that walked in. And then I'm going back the next week and door knocking. We did our first one on just a small test condo. We knocked on 149 doors. We had 19 conversations. We had 2 listing prospects. Out of that one little condo, we probably have 4 upcoming listings in that neighborhood in the next 3 months. So very purposeful and very, not just thinking I'm going to have an open house and thinking about it on Friday afternoon, right? Being extremely purposeful. And also, I'm going to tell you, it goes back to the basics. It's all in the follow-up. It's all in the follow-up.
Well, and it's your job, right? Like being professional, that's the difference. She told me that the recording wouldn't get me if I didn't talk into the mic. So that leads right into the next question is open houses. So what is your process for your open houses and what are some successes that you've had from them? Do you do open houses more to appease your client? Is it to pick up other business? What does your open house process look like?
I think I just said ours.
That was awesome. I'm out. Yeah. You're ahead again.
That's great info. I don't have much of a process with open houses. I actually don't do most of my open houses anymore. I let my team do it. But one thing similar to my business approach being personal and repeat relationships, I don't do lead generating or anything like that. And I don't particularly like open houses, but I think thinking back on this question when I was looking at it, to what made my most successful open houses successful was just having conversations with the people, not about the house, but about them, their family, what they're looking for, where they live, and connecting on a personal level. And thinking back to a couple open houses that were very successful for me, they weren't successful on the onset. I got calls several years later, but I made that connection with them. Oh, you're in school with my brother, so you know of my family, and that I grew up in the area. And one particular family, I have sold 6 homes with the family, investment properties. They've bought and sold several times. And that was someone that initially I didn't even, they just took my card. They were there looking for their sister who might move back. And another couple too, it was my very first listing. I remember so I had no idea what I was doing. But I connected with them on a personal level, just talking personal, where they live, and we knew these same people, and they ended up calling me, and I've sold over 1.2 million for them, and that wasn't until several years later. So I don't really have the best strategies, but I just keep it real, and yeah, I put them on my mailing list. I try and add them to my systems that I do have.
So a couple things. For our open houses, we do definitely post them on social media, and we will run some paid ads for them. In the summer, generally when we're having an open house, we will, my son, myself, my daughter, we will print out on yellow paper with black ink, because our logo is a sunflower, so it's super easy and cheap to do that. And we will put postcards on mailboxes. We generally do about 150, and we do it to a move-up neighborhood. So one of a couple, sometimes it's easier for me to tell a story about an example at an open house. The more that you know about the house and the neighborhood, the more successful that you will be on the contacts that you make actually following through. So an example is, I had an open house. I knew the neighborhood very well. Couple walks in, first thing they say is, we saw the house online. We probably want to move here in a year. This is the very first open house we've been to. Great. So as we talked about the house, I pointed out things in the house that other houses in that neighborhood didn't have. For instance, in this particular neighborhood, very few houses have full basements because there's so much limestone in the area. And when they got in the basement, they said, wow, this basement is great. We definitely want a full basement. And I said, you know what, you guys, as you get closer, you really need to watch the listings as they come up, because very few basements in here have a full basement. So because of my knowledge of the neighborhood, the area, the house, they actually stayed there for 45 minutes, left, came back, and said, we want to buy this house. We want you to be our realtor. And this was somebody that had absolutely no desire to move, but based on the information I told them, they knew this is a Duffy house, which is a very solid house. So I was able to give them information that maybe other realtors that weren't as prepared were not able to do that. So the definitely knowing about the house. And if somebody comes in and you realize very quickly that the deal killer is it doesn't have a first floor master, then you should already know in your head in that price range at least 2 other houses that are in the area that could be a fit that have a first floor master.
Nice. Haven't done a food truck yet, but open houses, to your point, Katie, most of my success comes a year to 10 years later. And we just had one last year that I met them. They somehow remembered me. I did 0 follow-up, but they called me and said, we just saw a house. We're wondering, we met you at the house here. And so that's just a happy surprise. But we have picked up buyers at open houses, and I think you do need to know the house. You can't just show up and they ask you a question. You have no idea. You have to prepare, especially if you're holding it for another agent and it's not your listing. You want to present yourself and the house well. So yeah, I will say the other thing is it's very difficult right now with open houses because they're absolutely mobbed. And you've got to worry about the safety of the house. You have to worry about your safety, the carpet, all of that. So it is, I don't know if having a longer open house would spread it out, like maybe doing a 1 to 4, but it is crazy out there.
Cynthia, do you ever take multiple people?
Yes, we do, because we worry for our sellers. Just, crowd control, especially if it's not nice out, getting everybody to take their shoes off. But I've seen houses that have had up to 90 people through in 2 hours. So you're not going to be able to make a connection during that time. So I don't know exactly what the answer is. Maybe a raffle to get people to sign in and follow up, but it's definitely, or maybe waiting a couple weeks till it doesn't sell. So the initial traffic has slowed down.
Well, when Cynthia, when she said, especially when you're holding an open house for somebody else, and I just wanted to make this point, when people are hoping, I can't believe that I actually have to say this, but this happened 3 times to me last year. I am more than happy for people to hold my open houses open, but you guys, you have to remember that your job for that open house is to represent that house and hopefully get a buyer for that house. It is not okay when the seller comes home to say, yeah, the open house wasn't really that good because I didn't get any leads. So I mean, maybe that's just an underlying thing that people, yeah.
We need to teach a bedside manner.
Well, I mean, and I hate that I even have to say that, but I didn't realize that, I mean, yeah, let's face it, we want to do open houses for leads, but when you're doing that open house, your primary responsibility really is, because you're not just representing Cynthia, me, you guys really are representing that house. So, and not saying to the seller when they get home, oh, well, your agent should do this. Your agent should do this. So that I just, when you, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Wait a minute. Don't knock the food truck. Come on, people.
Thanks, Julie.
Is this working? Or okay. Couple things were ping-ponging in my head. So first of all, we just closed on $2 million worth of business from somebody that we met at an open house 4 years ago. So again, it is not a race with open houses. It is a marathon. It is always in the lead follow-up. And when you talked about people signing in, we just switched to something this year that I love. Instead of a sign-in sheet, we're doing a survey. So when everybody walks in the door, they get a clipboard, and we're making a game of it. And we have gotten great response from that. So.
What kind of questions are on your survey?
Oh, Vince.
Will you repeat the question? So an idea.
What kind of questions are on our survey? how did you hear about it? We want to know where our marketing is working. What, you know, time frame, name and information. Are you working with a realtor even though we don't care? We're still going to follow up. Do you live in the neighborhood? What kind of property are you looking for? What did you like least? What did you like most? What is the quirkiest thing? We try and ask funny questions too, and we change it up a little bit. But they're the basic. I mean, Google open house survey. It'll come up.
So my friend, who I call kind of like a peer mentor, he's in Laguna Beach, and he has the marketing budget to buy a bunch of tablets, but I don't. So I have one tablet, and I'm going to start it this year if I can get enough listings in a low inventory market to actually hold open right now. But essentially with the, not to advertise, but the KW app, we can be stalkers and know when someone downloads it and starts looking at houses. Basically, I am going to do basically a main hub station where the flyers are at, and I'm going to say, not a fit. We have a house that will be a fit for you. Log into this app, search the MLS. So I'm going to start doing that, and then also Pocket Shop. So essentially, if I have a listing that does have an exclusive and it is not on the open market, and in that hub is going to say not a fit, I have something similar, and then put the details of a house and see if people inquire about that. Still going to focus on obviously selling the listing itself, but let's face it, a lot of times people are just looking, or if they want the specific neighborhood and you service that neighborhood as a farming piece. It's great on my listing presentations. I just went on one in Clintonville where it's going to be a domino deal, and if they could sell privately, great, they'll do it. And I have it documented, but be that as it may, the end result may be a successful sale out of it. So that is my two things that I'm going to try this year.
Was that an app?
The KW app, yeah.
Oh, it was the okay, I didn't hear what app.
Okay. So Pocket Shop?
Well, Pocket Shopping is if you have an exclusive pre-market and you just put the details of it.
Oh, he was just saying.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
Pocket Shopping. It's not like an app.
I was like, what?
Build that out for us. So yeah.
I'm like, what
Go daddy,
I'm
quick.
adding that right now.
He's upstairs. My open houses, I like to set a goal for myself to get at least 1 to 2 buyers out of that and then follow up. But I have to tell you, the best open house we ever did was with the Rains Group about 10 years ago. And this is when we had a lot of large homes inventory. I don't think you were there. Yeah, it was before your time. We got 2 big buses. We had 5 or 6 $1 million listings. We sent out invitations to the entire New Albany Country Club and some of the other neighborhoods in the lower end, like the Hampstead and New Albany links.
The ghetto.
Yeah, the ghetto of New Albany, where, you know, houses 5. Yeah. So we had all these houses lined up, and everybody had a different home that they were in. With the first one started with appetizers and drinks, and it went subsequently along the way, and this took most of the Sunday afternoon. So it was a pretty well-rounded kind of thing. And 20 minutes in each house, the bus loaded everybody up. By the end, we were in New Albany Farms, and it was the most fun. And it was more of an event than an open house. And it was great. I don't know if Doug probably remembers this. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we ended up selling one of the houses in the Farms off of that open house because those people were on the bus. And by the time they got to the house, they were all liquored up. And they were like, yeah.
Sold.
Hey, it worked.
Perfect. Anybody else? Raquel? Oh, wait, hold on.
Just so it gets on the recording. I love to run. It's my favorite.
Okay, so KW is releasing their new listing presentation, their buyer presentation, all of that. My question is, do you guys use the listing presentation or something similar that KW uses? And if so, do you send it ahead of time? Do you take it with you on your listing appointment? And when you do go to your listing appointment, do you sit down and do a presentation like, hey, I'm Jeff Mahler, this is all my stats? Or do you just sit down and say, these are your comps, this is, you know what I mean? Like, how is your listing presentation when you do that with the seller?
That's a really good question.
Great question, Raquel.
The baby mic is up there.
I wasn't paying attention.
For real.
No, I said I wasn't paying attention.
So I only do like a 3 cluster process, but I don't have a set thing. Like I said, I kind of vet the person when they call for the consultation to figure out what route I want to take essentially. But I break it down to house condition, pricing, comps, marketing, and it's a preliminary portfolio of just the services that I offer. Most of the time that's a visual that I'm taking with me now with just a tablet and kind of sift through it. Northwest Select is helping me with that to kind of just have a landing page for me to be able to put everything there. So it's just a one-click button, quick, easy, visual, pretty, great. The last part is if I've gauged that they're interviewing, I talk about my structure as an individual agent versus the average of what people are doing in this industry, which is teams or groups. And just what they get from me. It's not good, bad, or ugly. It's just, this is what I offer you. And if it's a fit, great, then we are a fit. Let's sign right here. But that's what the 3 clusters are in that. I really don't divert from that type of process. Otherwise, like I was just texting Cynthia the other night, I will get out of a listing appointment where they're not even really going to move. And I had been there for 3 hours on a Wednesday night, which was not fun. So. It was. I'm alive though.
Yeah. So, do you use the KW?
I don't use the KW presentation. Thank you.
I don't use the KW, and the order always differs depending on just the vibe of the person. Sometimes I can't wait to walk through the house, and other times you can tell they're really nervous to have you in the house, and they definitely don't want you to see their basement. So they just want to like get to know you a little bit first. So.
I think the biggest key is what I do is I use the Keller Williams listing presentation, but I modify it and maybe use about 1/3 of it, and then I pre-print them up so that no matter what, I'm ready to go with them. The biggest key, I think, that when you walk in the door is to be able to match and mirror that person, because you can figure out really quickly where that's going to go. I would say 95% of the time, well, no, yeah, probably 95% of the time that I pull out the book. Sometimes they don't even look at it. Sometimes we don't even get to it. But very seldom, I would say maybe 5% of the time I actually go through the book. And that's if I'm really having a hard time with the person, but normally very seldom. But it's good to have them ready. That way, if you get something, you don't have to worry about going in. It's great that you want to put all the fancy, their picture of their house and all that stuff, but you're already going to do a CMA anyway. So I would just pre-print some and be ready to go.
I actually do tour the home, but I also end up talking a lot and I end up being there 3 hours. So I don't know if I suggest that, but I also think that it helps me. Like I said before, it's those personal conversations. And so that kind of gets to be where if it's someone that I don't already know, gets them to trust me, like me, respect me, and want to work with me. So I think that just kind of, seeing pictures on the wall of Italy, oh, did you, just, I don't know, having conversations, not just about the house, to get to know them on a personal level. But yes, I end up being there longer. But then I usually, and I like to know when we're going through the house, which I like Jeff saying, can you send me that before? Because I take notes of what they've done and ask, tell me, are you thinking about doing this? And then I'll give my input and kind of go back and give you, if you commit to me, like what to do to prep your house for the market. But then I go back and I have my listing presentation. It is not the KW one. And then based on asking them questions, get to know how they learn, how they think, and what's going to be important for them to know. And then those are the pages that I kind of take out or just pull from my head and talk about. And then I usually don't talk about myself either. And I just leave everything with all that information in there.
I guess we're batting almost 1,000 here. I also, we do not use the KW listing presentation. We have a, sorry, we have a, we have a presentation that's branded to our team. I also walk in the door and want them to feel comfortable. So I like to do a quick tour of the home with them. I've just learned from seasoning and after being places for 3 hours that I want to be in and out in an hour at all possible. So I've learned how to manage the questions properly and kind of redirect that energy to get through the home quickly and get back at the table. I find that that makes them comfortable if I do that. And I'm also looking and thinking about how emotionally attached are they to this product. So I learn a lot about them through the walkthrough, more about them than the home. And that's what I'm looking for, because then I know where I need to go from a mirror and match when I sit down at that table. I over prepare, but I would say 90% of the time, I never open my iPad. I'm never going through the presentation at this point. But I'm over prepared with statistics and where does their home fit into the market, and yeah, market stats.
Okay. And I know, right? There's the timer. Any questions so far?
Uh-oh.
If anybody would like to see the KW listing presentation tomorrow morning at 8:30.
I want to be super clear before I get like a target on my head that no, it's there for you as a resource, right? Like the last thing you want is 200, the last thing I want is 250 of my agents going out with the exact same listing presentation. That's there for you as a template to know the information that you need to include. You know, there are graphics, there are plenty of things in there, and I'm not saying anything if you do use it, that's perfectly fine. I just want to be really clear that it's there. I've got one other person before you, and then that it's just there to help you out.
Since the consensus is to not use, or you guys are not actively using the KW listing packet, my question is, what is the one thing that you think is the most valuable add that you have added to your listing packet that makes an impact during your presentation or your appointment?
Well, we don't use it. I mean, can you not use that? You're killing me.
So when I go over a marketing portfolio, I'm a numbers guy. And so not only with my Google Analytics, but just all the background to it, if I'm having the issue with pricing, like we all do, you know, you always talk about the demographic that would be attracted to the house. I like to show them how or why I use certain things versus others, and then give them the numbers behind that. I feel like so many people are just like, yes, your house is going to be on Zillow, Realtor.com, those type of things. I'm showing that from that, I can pinpoint based off of IP address and location where people are coming from or what we're trying to attract. And sometimes that helps sell the fact that my pricing will be right based off of who I'm trying to attract from the marketing. And maybe half the time they're glazed over and they don't know. And then all of a sudden they're like, we'll just go with you. So either or though, you're showing them that there is some fundamental research that's being done as to why you are approaching their house and the marketing with their house the way that you are. And that wasn't something easy. I hate listening to panels where people tell you what they do and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, that sounds great. How do I do it? I literally have talked to IT people and researched certain websites that work better than others and got the retention rate on them, paid for things to figure out, you know, IP address of where consumers are coming from so I could avoid getting fake phone numbers and emails. So it is like Big Brother, but that's where I spend a lot of my marketing budget, is just towards the retention factor of keeping a solid client and showing them where the numbers come from. Thank you.
I was just going to ask, there's been a ton of conversation up there about, pardon? Kim gave it to me. Yeah. She apparently is now in charge here. So there's been a lot of conversation about understanding the client and how they learn and what kind of personalities they have. And it's not always easy. Like if you put Kim in a room with a high I for an hour, that's very difficult for her. And that's no offense to her, but a lot of high Ds, you know, we kind of have to be chameleons to make that work. And so how do you maintain that energy and how do you think about that? Because, you know, you could lose a listing with a high D if you're going to spend 20 minutes going over your marketing because they don't care. They're like, I want to sign the listing agreement. So I've plenty of times never opened the book. It's a 10-minute listing agreement. And it's we're at 250, 250 makes sense, let's get it signed, and they want to go do something else. So how do you look at that, and how are you able to be on and respectful of people who learn differently and those sorts of things?
You said something that triggered my thought process.
The 20 minutes, Heidi.
Oh, you know what? I think first of all, ask questions, right? You're asking lots of questions. And second of all, like you said, when you agree upon the number, if you've agreed upon the number, don't oversell them. Don't keep talking. I think people feel like I have to go through the presentation. I have to stop talking.
Yeah.
We've agreed upon the number. Move on. Let's talk about how we're going to present your home to market properly. So I think people feel like they have to go through all that, or they have to oversell something that we've already agreed on from the minute I walked in the door.
Do you ask an appointment where they feel their home fits into the market?
My husband and real estate partner. I make it a game, sir. So it's always like, I would say, I talk about the internet and how it's, it's there and it's savvy and we all know and we're all stalking. So at the end of the day, let's play a game. What's your number? What's your number? What's my number? They may be irrelevant because at the end of the day, the market is going to comp. So I make it a game, and I warm them up to telling me their number. Then I know too how hard I have to put them down.
Nice.
Right. Or like, I don't care about it here. Did I put that right away from you? No.
I don't have anything to comment on that.
Good. Okay, any other questions about, well, basically that. Also, open houses. Did you all want to know anything else about how they do their open houses or their processes or any of that?
I'm sorry. Do you guys reduce your commission? It's such a competitive market. Do you reduce your commission, and what do you say around that?
I can start. The answer was, do you reduce your commission? Very much so not. When I started, I was kind of just like told like, oh, here, you can't. What's that?
We're not. Like, what is it called?
Lori?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
We can't answer your question. Next.
Sorry. It's a good question.
I wasn't thinking about that. I'm sorry. New to the area. So for all I know, you're all from right here. Okay. Next.
Do you find that when you
Sorry,
do the
you gotta
open
do
house? Sorry. Do you find when you're doing the open house, they're there also sometimes to interview you for their listing?
Yes, and I think that's why you have to start with trying to sell that listing, because if they walk in, you don't know who they are all the time. And if you're not representing that listing well, they're not going to talk to you. So.
Are we done with the question?
No.
I've
I
had
saw
buyers
somebody-
come where they, one, were surprised that I was actually at my own open house, which is why ever since that happened to me, I don't let people hold my listings open very much. But they were kind of vetting me, asking questions about the area. And I'm like, wow, you really know a lot, or you've read some type of manual of first-time home buyer. But it was to get my market knowledge. And then lo and behold, they call me and then, oh, I recognize you. And that's happened a lot recently. So.
Did you want to say something? Okay.
Do. No, they are interviewing you. Most of the neighbors who come in there, they're definitely looking to find an agent that can help them sell their house too. And it may not be something that's sold next week, but a year from now or 2 years from now, if they've got your card and they remember you, they're going to call you.
Okay.
And besides, they want to see what happened to the house and see the changes that were made.
Very true. Okay, so let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about how you market a listing, how much money you spend on a listing? Do you have a specific formula that you use if it's $1 million listing versus a $100,000 listing? Let's talk about marketing. Who wants to take that?
I wasn't on the list. No.
Well, new sheriff, and I want to talk about the things that, I think that matters. Does anybody think that matters? Marketing? Okay, good, perfect. So let's talk about marketing.
I don't want to take over. It's a little micro to the macro question. The one thing that I started getting was defensive when people were trying to push me up against the wall and reduce my commission. So I've got a breakdown that I use, and it's a little bit more rounded figures, but it basically shows what I am outputting before I even get paid the commission. So sometimes just even defining where the money goes with my marketing budget, what I have to pay for taxes, what I have to pay KW, those type of things, it actually gives some ease to show that this is my stake in the game when I am saying that, yes, I do charge a 6% commission and this is what it is. So with that being said, that has helped me greatly because I think a lot of people don't necessarily explain where or how they differentiate why they charge what they do. But anyone that hires a contractor, the first question that they ask is, why are they being charged what they are? So am I allowed to talk about that, Lori?
You are not allowed to speak of commission.
Got
Could we
it.
please limit the conversation to marketing budget only?
Okay.
Thank
Marketing
you.
budget typically for me is about 1% to 1.25% listing, depending on if it's under 500,000. If it's over 500,000, then that's where I tell them I spend a little bit more money. So reverting back to that sheet, I usually will inflate some of the numbers of which I spend. I mean, if you even just break down, if you look at Zillow on a day-to-day of what you have to pay, however you pay it, if it's paid through the brokerage or you individually, just break down a 30-day basis. Say you take a 30-day listing, this is what you're paying on a daily rate for Zillow. Add that to a piece of paper and show them this is a cost in terms of what I am spending to market your home. Put that on every single website, and that number looks a heck of a lot fatter, and it's a lot better to say, this is why I'm charging what I am.
Love it. Thank you. You can drop that if you want.
That was good. Value proposition, right?
Yeah, that was great. Hey, but you use the mic. What else? Who else? Who else can share how they calculate marketing or what they do to market specifically that you're willing to share?
We got nothing. We got nothing. I'm all new. So we're listening to all of you now.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty verbal about my marketing budget to my clients if the property has been on the market more than 60 days. Then what I will do is I'm very specific about going back and saying, okay, these are the costs. What I do is I give a certain percentage based on my admin. I have a full-time admin and a full-time marketing person. So I break down their salaries and the just listed postcards with the postage, what does that cost in the printing? Generally, our marketing, it's actually been better the last couple years because it is definitely more of a seller's market. So we haven't had to carry those listings as long. But still, at the end of the day, I'm finding that our number is about 0.8%. And you would be surprised. I mean, it really, it really stays about the same. It doesn't fluctuate much.
Lori, when you say 0.8%,
Mhm.
are you talking about 0.8 of your 3% or 0.8 of a percent?
0.8, yes. So no, so 0.8 of 1% of whatever the commission would be. Yes. Mhm. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got a
She
question.
said whatever, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever that would be.
Do you have a hard line on your marketing dollar for the year?
So Eric just asked if you had a hard line on your marketing per year, your marketing dollar per year, and then what was the other one?
What's your ROI or what's your multipliers? Do you have to have 4x return for you to be able to put that dollar out there?
And what's the ROI that you're looking for? Again, I'm doing this for the recording. I know you all can hear him. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So yeah, that's a great question. So that kind of brings back to why we don't always squirrel. What should we do? What should we change? Because that way we can really stay strong on our numbers, and we know exactly where they should be. I spend about 10% of gross commission in a hole that goes to marketing, and how and things that will affect that are, for instance, if we decide, all right, we're going to make a major change and it's going to cost 20,000, then we look at that number and say, okay, it's our return on investment. Is this going to be over the next 5 years? Are we going to have to do this again every year? Do we need to up those numbers? I watch our marketing really close. Postage obviously drives it. Another thing that we are extremely consistent about is our calendars. We send out our calendars every year. And what I'm going to tell you guys, I truly hope that all of you do, because it took me 17 years to figure this out. I send out those calendars every year. We started out with 200 and we are now at 10,000. And we just send out the little magnetic. Yeah, they will call me and ask for them, but here is something that I cannot believe. You assume that people get your calendar and they're like, oh, that's a realtor. If I ever need a realtor, I'll call her. No, you have to tell them. You actually have to put in a little card that says, if you're looking to buy or sell, blah, blah, blah. You actually have to do that. And how I figured this out is because I've been doing the same thing over and over, and we changed that this year. Holy smokes. It has made a significant difference. So truly, take that from me. Don't assume that people know what you want. They're getting a free calendar.
So Lori, in your call to action, what did you write in that note? Use me. If you use another realtor, I'll hunt you down.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was more like,
don't cheat on me.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 3 sentences. I appreciate being a member of your community. If you are considering listing your home, please contact us. It's a little bit, it's not that generic. It's a little nicer than that, but it's literally it's the same size as the calendar. So it's got the 3 sentences on the front, and then on the back just has our information. And it's on nice cardstock. It's not just like a crappy piece of paper.
Thank you. No, that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also do the calendars, but I always say Happy New Year and thanks for thinking of me or whatever, but thank you. I will use that now. So for my marketing, just with an actual listing, I always, I do social media, sponsored posts, who probably based on the neighborhood, who we think that potential buyer could be. Things like that. Of course, professional listing photos. I always tell people, I heard this once, probably a panel, your first showing's online, your second showing's when you show up. So I think that's very important, which I think most people know. But, and one thing is I like to put my money into the communities that I serve. So one of the biggest things I do is monetary wise, is I have a monthly ad in the Upper Arlington Living magazine, because that's where I live and grew up and know more people than any other areas, and that drives people to my website, to my listings. It gives me name recognition, as well as sponsoring a lot of local school and community events just to market myself, but in turn it also drives people to market my listings as well.
That's a lot of information. It was all good. I was going to say, back to the business, I think we're very strategic. Vince reminded me, we track every dollar. We use CTE. Everyone's familiar with that program. So there's not a commitment to excellence. So it's an online tracking program where we know exactly every dollar that we're spending. And we are being very purposeful and intentional about it this year as we come into a new year and as we moved over to Keller Williams.
Do any of you pay for staging?
He asked if anyone paid for staging.
We, I guess the value proposition or the marketing proposition or the, with the clients is we like to consider ourselves a full service concierge team. So we're paying for staging. We pay for the staging. We pay for the consultation, professional photos, video walkthrough. If your home is vacant, we're going to do vacant home checks every week, down to flushing every toilet and sending you a form to let you know how it went. So again, it's about concierge service. And I was listening to a podcast before I came here and the Ritz-Carlton guy was on it. And literally, because I always tell my agents when we're training as a team, we are really in the business of customer service. We just happen to know real estate. And that's our motto always. And we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. So if you come from that mindset, you can be numbers driven, right? Know your stats, but what value are you providing? We are consistently and always going to be in relationship with our clients, and that goes to retention.
I have a question. How do you pay for the staging up front? What if the list never sells? Do you have it as a, okay.
You invest up front, and let them know that, right? You're investing.
Is anybody using campaigns in Command for their marketing? And if so, what kind of feedback are you getting from that?
Thank you. Okay. Anybody
I
else?
think we've found that the cost per lead is excellent. So we're using a little bit of both. We're still using, the Facebook, and we're also using Command, but I think we're averaging less than $1 per lead. We're getting 75 cents per lead. So
nice.
And again, it's kind of just like any lead generation you're doing, you guys, whether it's Boomtown or Facebook or anything else, it really is in the lead follow-up, always.
So about oh, God.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up on those leads that you're getting at like 75 cents a lead. How many of them are you capturing like legit phone number and email?
85% right now.
So he asked of the leads that they received, how many of those did he legitimately receive phone numbers and emails? And the answer, okay. And the answer was 75%.
I think it's higher than that.
Nice.
We're like 85% right now.
Nice. And part of that is the construction of the ad, right?
Absolutely. Yep. So
some of the
attend your
things-
technology classes.
Absolutely. There are a few people that attended yesterday. Did you all learn anything? All right. Okay. So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, if I were all of you, I would be doing Command today.
Yes.
I'm just telling you. 3 weeks ago, I said, that's it. I don't know why we have so many listings and we do not get leads on our listings. This is ridiculous. We ran 3 campaigns and had over 30 leads. So we spent $70 and had over 30 leads. Now, you do get the email and the phone number. I honestly wasn't prepared that was going to happen. So now, even though our team is getting those leads, I have to go back and now put in a follow-up system so that we're prepared. But I absolutely would be using this technology. So that's just my 2 cents. And we started doing it 3 weeks ago and we actually got something. Thank the Lord.
Yeah, and just really quickly on that, one of the things we talked about yesterday in the class was if you have someone that comes through an open house or someone that's that's hit on a specific listing, an ad for a specific listing, and you do get a phone number and an email address, but you obviously don't have a physical address, then actually go in, because once they register, they automatically go into your contacts in Command. So then go into that specific contact as part of the follow-up plan she's talking about and assign them that address, right, of that specific home. And then you can set them up on a 2-week neighborhood touch. So that's coming to them every 2 weeks, what's going on in that neighborhood. So it's something, right? You have some kind of a touch. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left, and I would love to tackle the social media monster. What do you do? And we can talk specifically about how you market your listings and also how you market your business. You know, what type of lead gen do you do on social media? What do you do to get your listings out there? Like, just what do you do in general to get your business out there via social media? Not everybody at once. Come on, Cynthia.
All right. So I've played around with the sponsored ads, not through Command, but just, you know, they're very inexpensive. I don't know if I've had a ton of success with it. We do have a Facebook page, a business Facebook page. We do get contacts from it. And it's hard to know. Sometimes someone might feel like they come from there, but they also happen to know somebody that bought a house from us. So it's kind of like multi-layered.
To track it.
Yeah. So, and it's hard because you don't want to be throwing up on social media every day, multiple times a day. But at the same time, you want to have a presence so people can find you. So it's definitely a balance.
So what do you do? What type of things, when you say balance, what type of things do you put on there?
We do put our new listings, and I've been talking with the team about, we have new listings, but we've never said we've sold one. So maybe we should tell people they've sold. And so, yeah. Slower. We have some success. So I think we're still figuring it out. And in terms of, you know, the younger generation is happy to be, you know, on Instagram. There's another agent I talk to a lot, and he's had huge success on Instagram stories. And he's on Instagram stories all the time. And he claims to have had about 8 closings in the last 12 months from it. So I don't know if I can keep up with all of it. And then he just posted a TikTok video. I'm like, oh my.
Well, and the thing is, that's just what I was about to say. If you don't have a TikTok account and you're thinking, okay, I'm never going to do that, please just go ahead and create one so that you have your name, right? Like, go ahead and do it so you create your name. Well, that's what a lot of people said when Instagram came out, right? When Instagram came out, a lot of people said, oh, I don't get it. It's just pictures, because it started out really as a forum for photographers. And so now Instagram is like one of the primary places, right, that people hit. So it's going to be the same way with TikTok. Just think of it as a combination of Facebook and Instagram and YouTube all in one little quick thing. So if you don't have one, go ahead and do it. And just to that point, Cynthia, you know, it's when she said that they put out that they listed them, but they never told the story that they sold. I could just tell you personally, if you don't tell your story, other people will. So you better tell it. Yeah.
We'll do it.
All right. So who else? Who else has something on social media?
I believe that our team is pretty strong on social media. We focus very heavily on our brand, which is the sunflower. It is very effective because I will have people that randomly will just text me a photo of a sunflower field, or they're in a store and there's like a really cool sunflower and they'll send it to me. So the branding is super important. I do believe there is a fine line between too much on social media. So I have 3 different pages, like on Facebook. One is my personal. I don't really ever say anything about my business on there. The Lori Lynn Group main page that we have, we always post information about what do you think of this kitchen? This is a new color in the market. So we do keep up with that. I don't think that we get a ton of business off of it, but it makes us real. And when people see that we have a lot of likes on it, that does help. So that's about what, I mean, we do Instagram, all of those things, but I think people are just so watered down with so much social media that I think you need it for your presence, but that's all.
Who else? Oh, social media, I was going to say.
I also do Instagram and Facebook, but I think Instagram's been more successful than Facebook. I think one thing that's neat about it too is your clients get really excited about it too, and then they share it. So it's not just your post, but they get excited about their new home or their listing, and they want people to know. So it's just more eyes and gets them engaged too.
I concur and agree with everything everyone said. I think that, do something versus nothing. Also, we're a fairly young team, a brand new team. So for me, it's about branding, and we do a lot, and a focus is a lot on about getting to know our team, so we can be in relationship with our clients. And don't be afraid to be funny. And we want to put the just solds and for sale, but we also want them to know us as a team and know our brand. We also want them to know we're trying this year to really focus and let people know that, we live and play in the communities that we serve. So, I live in Highland Lake, so being very purposeful this year about being involved in the brand in Highland Lake. So don't be afraid to brand yourself to the community you're in on your personal and your professional page.
Does anybody have a specific like social media schedule or calendar, or do you all do any of that type of thing?
I'm clueless. I just found that little box at the bottom.
Stop it.
We do. You too. We're trying to get our act together. I mean, it's a constant. It's constant. Some days we're a disaster. Somebody called me one time and said, "Can I shout at you?" And I'm like, "No." We're a hot mess. Are you kidding me? But like on Mondays we do. On Mondays we quote, and we get quotes from each team member. Tuesdays, get to know the team member Tuesday, just constantly making sure. And listen, the main thing is consistency there too, right? Because you want to be in front of people and you want them to start to get to know you. So just put a little simple thing together, and then, sprinkle in the value, right? What's going on in the market. We do market snapshots towards the end of the week, and we pick different neighborhoods. So we've got really into doing that, and we love it. Average days on market for the communities we work in. We love that. So yeah, pretty consistent on things we do.
Thank you.
We are extremely consistent with our marketing. That is truly the one thing that I know that our systems are very strong and in place on. We have a marketing calendar that we live by every year. Every November, we review that marketing calendar to determine if there's any changes that need to be made. And it's fun looking back from like 2008 and looking at that calendar, what we did then versus what we're doing today, and how things have changed. But our calendars, I mean, we know we're ordering them in July. They're going to be there in August. They're going out in September. Our social media posts, very consistent when they're going, what's happening, community events. I mean, we've done it so consistent for so long that people know what to expect. So that's it.
Nope, you're just holding it. You're just being nice. Okay, so do any of you all have specific neighborhoods that you sell more in, or you have a dominating presence in? How did you become significant in those neighborhoods? How did you solidify your presence there?
I do a lot in Worthington, and there's a double-edged sword with that. I like to say I do more outside of Worthington than inside of Worthington. I just have a larger presence in Worthington than any other area. And it just came from what we're all talking about, living and playing in the community that you live in. And, back in the day in 03, 04, 05 through probably 2010, I can't even count the amount of open houses I had. And so I feel like that also wasn't just one open house and everybody knows me. It was decades of open houses, it feels like. And again, it's kind of sad that open houses aren't as available anymore and the same impact that they used to have. But there's social media, which back in 03, 04, 05, there was no social media to get your name out. So there's good and bad with the new way. But yeah, I think my kids went to school in Colonial Hills. I grew up in Worthington. A lot of my listings in the beginning came from there, but I looked at a chart, and very consistently I do about the same amount in Worthington every year, but outside of Worthington has grown. Like,
time's up. Stop
I know.
talking.
I feel like I'm playing a game.
No, I'm
Okay.
joking. Yeah. So what you feel like open houses were that was your main thing with
I think open
getting your business
houses,
in Worthington?
open houses, volunteering, working, having friends, the whole thing. And I've never joined a group in hopes of getting leads. It's more where I spend my time, you know, so I've been very active in a running group for 17, 18 years. And of course, we all meet in Worthington. So that has evolved my love of running into people who will refer me. Kind of the same for everybody. Who you spend time with, where you spend time is where your business is going to grow from, unless you're going to be an internet type of business, which I know a couple realtors that have that's how they've grown their business. So there's not just one way to do it.
Yes.
How many of you still do just listed, just sold postcards?
She asked how many people did just listed and just sold postcards. 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6. What else do you do? I do want you to. Why are you still asking me questions?
Every listing that I put on, I do new listing after appraisal. I do a sale pending, then I'll do a sold a week after I sell, and then about 4 weeks after that, I'll do what I call a cluster mailer, where it's essentially not only did I sell this, but I sold within the perimeter. I would say last year, about 62% of my business was through Clintonville. I was born and raised in Clintonville, and I kind of do the ink blot method where I spread out and I start absorbing more and more and more until my marketing budget gets insane and it's bad. 4 postcards out for every listing. And I also, obviously excluding the new listing, 3 postcards out for every buyer represented sale. The numbers on that. So my marketing budget probably about 3 years ago, I would stick to 30,000 a year and that would be it. Now it's at 55,000 a year, just based off of the listing inventory that I do. I mean, last year I serviced 73 listings, so it got expensive. If I run into a market where it's not my niche market, what I will typically do is I will showcase that home a little bit larger so I don't have as many homes to supplement. But anything that I've sold representing buyers or sellers within the last 2 years, I will supplement that by stating that I do service your market in your area. I get great retention from it. One of my best stories was that this lady who lived in her home for 40 years whopped out a folder of every single thing that I had ever sold her. And I sat there like, this is the best day ever. So, no, it wasn't. I pay my grandma.
She asked if it was his grandma.
But similar to just the postcard aspect of it, I do have a farming piece that goes out every 30 days. Cynthia got me onto it. It's called RSP. I think it's an HER product from back in the day. It is a gold mine for me. It took about 2 years to get to the point of knowing that it was working, where in Clintonville, I do like the homes tour and things that are more public events. And people say, oh, you're that guy that sends that mailer. And that just enforces me to keep going and doing that. So the layer methodology is that at least I am touching someone on a monthly basis multiple times. And I'm not basically just selling a house and being done with it. I'm marketing the hell out of it until it's done.
He asked if there was a cap on percentage of marketing dollars versus GCI.
So my GCI has been within the similar wheelhouse for the past 3 years. So I've been staying consistently around a bulk budget. There are times where if I know that there's a retention factor with a marketing piece that's going to pay off in the long run, I'll splurge. It just really depends. If I'm marketing Jeff Mahler, real estate agent, then I stick to that $55,000 the last 2 years. If it's something where it's a charity event, then I will put myself involved with it. But most of the time, people don't know me as Jeff Mahler anymore. I'm Jeff Mahler, real estate agent. So,
hey Jeff,
it can be good.
How many postcards are you sending out per mailing
Great
around
question.
that listing?
So there really aren't subdivisions in Clintonville, for example. So with an area, if it's within the same price or a step down price or step up price, I will do 500 to 750 postcards. I think the numbers pay off. If you do something minimal like a 200 or less, to me, it's not worth it. You're not going to get the retention factor if you look at the statistics. In terms of my RSP right now, I'm up to 7,500 homes that it goes out to, which is pretty insane. But again, every year I will absorb a new area or a new community. If it's a proper subdivision, I'll do that specific subdivision and then a surrounding 3 subdivisions that are similar quality, build, or price point, just to show them that not only am I servicing this, but I can service yours, and it's the same stature of home.
Is that newsletter monthly or quarterly?
Too many questions. Eric, wait your turn. What's up?
Is the newsletter quarterly or monthly?
It's monthly. Well, it was agent mailings at one time. I don't necessarily know what RSP stands for. So. It's like it's a 4-fold gloss section. It will give you the 3 things you need to know in terms of the meat of the content. Your listings. I have my lender feature his information in terms of what rates are. And then it'll give the comparable market analysis of the neighborhood that it's specifically sent to. You also buy the neighborhood as an account holder with RSP, so no one else can mail with that particular product that I have bought. So it kind of locks you down. It's great, and honestly, if you do decide to use it, please make sure you refer Jeff Mahler. I get $50 off my next send out. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the common denominator. Oh wait, Eric, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to skip you. I know.
He wants to know
That's a great
the
question.
percentage of turnover in a neighborhood that he's
Cynthia and I have
looking
talked
for.
about this a lot. I was going to give Cynthia a big shout out when we were talking about mentors or coaching, because she's like my peer mentor. We talk about everything. It's great. In terms of farming, though, I would say if someone absorbs like 25 to 30% of the neighborhood and they have consistency on a 3-year basis, then I may not put as much money into it, but I'm never shy of competition either. If there are 2 different people that dominate a section, I'm all in, because I feel like there's a saturation level there where you can kind of be a different standout agent compared to what they're typically seeing. And let's face it, not everyone likes to go with the neighborhood expert all the time. Sometimes they want to switch some things up. So.
And is there a turnover rate that you look for, like at least 6%, at least 7%?
I would say usually it's about 5%, to be honest with
Okay.
you. But I mean, the biggest thing is, again, it's the sprint, not the marathon. If I'm getting down the road that someone got something I sent out 7 years ago, to me, it's worth that investment. But you have to be habitual about it. If you don't get success after 2 years and you just stop, you just wasted 2 years worth of that money. You got to keep going and give yourself at least like a 3 to 5 year stint.
I quit. Yeah.
But to aid what she's saying, she already is marketing certain areas in her quads, and they know who she is, and she dominated it. So it wasn't needed.
Well, probably is.
Not so.
But it's a lot of work. You know,
It is.
It's not just a go and do it. You spend a lot of time and effort in addition to the money.
So I give myself the Sunday before it goes to print, it's 3 hours, and it's kind of like you are an editor for like a small magazine. It is stressful in that respect. I always hold on to every single one I do, and I just modify the newest listings that I sold, pop the information in there. My lender knows when to be ready on his stuff, and just run in a quick CMA. So it's not as bad as you would think, but it is doable. The thing is, you just have to have systems and be systematic, and that's the thing is I expect to get that on the 4th week every month for the next following week to go out, and it's just on my calendar.
So the common denominator in all of this is, I feel like all 6 of you in very different ways treat your business like a business. Right? Is everybody hearing that? How they know their numbers, they know their percentages, they know their returns, they know exactly how much they're spending versus how much they want to get back. So actually treating it like a business, where I know very standard, and I've lived that life as a realtor as well, where you just see if you throw enough stuff against the wall and something sticks, you're doing good, right? But when we look at sustainability and being at a specific level, right, getting your business to a certain level of treating it like a true business. So hats off to all of you, because that's amazing. So thank you. Any other questions before we get one last piece of advice? Okay, so let's just go back. You're a brand new agent, just getting in the business. And you know what you know now. how would you do things differently? How would you run your business from day one versus how you actually ran your business from day one? They're like, that's not on the paper.
It is not on the paper. Money is always the hardest question. I think it's so different from what my marketing budget. I would kill myself 13 years ago if I started to say, you spent $55,000 on marketing. I mean, it's insane. To start out, what I would do is give more back, kind of like reverse prospect to certain neighborhoods or certain service providers or community events. For example, right now with like my accountants or any small businesses in Clintonville, I always try and advertise them on my information so that I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I wish I would have done a lot more of that when I first started out to build my name recognition, because now I'm doing it and it's just expected, which is kind of tiring, I think, at times. The other thing that I did, I was on a team for a quick 3-month stint when I first got into the business 13 years ago, and I'll never go back. But essentially, my whole thing was I'm a systematic person where I built up basically saving 10 listings before I would go out on my own. So I think starting and being budget friendly, build your systems as your foundation. If you're not ready to go out there and start slewing around your name saying that you're a real estate agent, if you're going to take on a volume that you wish to do in the future, make sure that you have a business structure in place so that once you start getting that volume, you're able to do that. And that's what I did my first 2 years in the business, was figuring out, okay, if I go into contract, this is the set email things that need to go out to clients. Just every single step that we do on a daily basis, figure that out well in advance before you start this. That's what I would give advice to.
Thanks. Lisa?
Well, I've been sheltered for 16 and a half years. So all of this is like enlightening to me. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have started out on my own at a different point than 16 and a half years later. I would have prepared a little bit more in terms of marketing and social media. When you're on a big team, you get into this hamster wheel of production and following up their systems and making sure that you're following up with that lead base versus following up with your past clients. Because I think I lost some sphere and people just by the fact that I was constantly on this hamster wheel. So being on a team is great, especially when you're young and you're new and you don't know anything. But looking at it, hindsight now, I really was in the dark. I had no clue about half of this. And sitting here on this panel with you all is very enlightening, and thank you very much. And the amount that I've learned and just what we've learned from Command and everything else that's coming, it's just huge. And Brian, I'll be there tomorrow. I will use the listing presentation because that's the way we were trained. So yeah,
You do
but
you, Lisa.
yeah,
You do you. One down. Yeah. One down.
I mean, it's all about mindset and putting yourself out there and just trusting that, you know, eventually you might sell another house again.
Yeah. Thank you.
The question was piece of advice and things we do different.
Yeah, you're starting.
Okay.
You're brand new, starting out. What would you do differently today, knowing what you know?
So my piece of advice is just keep in contact with your past clients, and it's a relationship business, and know where your business is coming from, because what I touched on before, there's so many different ways to do this business. There's not just one. And consistently, when I go back and go, where did all of the business come from in the last year, the last month, the last week? It's past clients, people that I know, people that I've had a connection with. So when we do start talking about social media, I'm not going to go spend $20,000 on social media. I'd rather spend $20,000 on my past clients and my relationships and my sphere. So just really think, but don't overthink, because if you overthink, you can't make a decision ever. Exactly.
Absolutely.
You know, it's hard to say what you would do differently because I think you do, as cliche as it sounds, you learn from things. And it was really fun making mistakes. And it was really fun trying to build a team and learning from it. But again, I was just keep better track of who we sold houses to. And it's hard as they move on. And they may not want to keep in touch with us either. Who knows?
But you still gotta stay at it.
Yeah, you got to stay at it. And remember, it's a people business and you've got to like people. If you don't like people, it's probably not a great business for you.
Thank you.
If I had one piece of advice that I would say is I threw everybody that was a past client into past client. I would have said past listing, past seller, buyer, repeat seller, repeat buyer, I would have been extremely detailed of where those people came from, because now when I want to send out a mass piece of information, I can't just go send it, because some of these people are like, you sold my house last year and I don't live in the state anymore. So if I would have been 2019, seller moved out of state, then if I would have done that, then I could have went to those people and said, I hope everything's great. And I would have had more opportunity for emails and more mass things. So that's what I would have done different.
Thank you.
Well, I got in the business in 2007 and now I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Because I just graduated and the market was bad and whatnot. But anyways, I worked 3 jobs starting out in real estate for about 4 years. And I think looking back on it now, I remember going into the office and thinking, what do I do today? Like, I want to be a realtor and I don't know how to be, or what I need to be doing. So Keller Williams has been an awesome place. Even now, I've learned so much today, and I think you can always be learning. But know that there's so many options and opportunities, but finding what works for you, similar to when you go on those listing appointments, figuring out what that person's style is, what the relationship should be based on what their personality type is, what yours, figure out what you excel at. And, I'm similar to Cynthia. I'm very big into someone gets married, they get a wedding gift, or they have a baby. I wish I would have realized that, core 150, sooner, because that's where all my business comes from, and put that time, money, effort, and energy into that early on, because then it's just a domino effect and a line for your business there. So I just wish I would have. I think it's discouraging starting out. You don't have the money to do things. So just, if you don't have the money to do it, then putting it into those personal face-to-face conversations and interactions.
Thank you.
I 1000% agree with all that. And I think at the end of the day, I think we're all saying the same thing. It is, you get so busy as a new agent focusing on the deal you're in and the client you're with, you forget about the past. So if I could go back now and be in better relationships with my database, things may look differently. And I just want you all to know how lucky you are to have Mama Gibbs at your office. She's amazing. Little funny story. I'm Mama Gibbs. I'm going to tell you a little story. Very brand new agent. One of the very first times I ever was scripting and role playing on a group coaching call with probably 20 of us. I was the agent. She was the buyer. Got off, left the office, sobbed in my car. But she is an amazing person of integrity and character. Y'all are lucky to have them in this office.
Thank you. Thank you. How about that? So Julie Wills, Katie Davis Spence, Lori Lynn, Cynthia McKenzie, Jeff Mahler, Lisa Gibbs. Can we please give them a great big round of applause? So if you found today valuable, a quick text message or an email or a DM on social media or something to thank these folks for sharing all of their knowledge would be wonderful. Thank you all very much for coming out today, and thank you again to the panelists. Thank you.
I'm not, I was born in Ashland. Oh, yeah. I have family in
Thank you very much. I mean, they haven't run me off yet. Nothing formal. Bring it in. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job.
Did we get
Yeah.
You're fantastic. You look very good. I learned new ideas.
Well, it's a nice collaboration with different, not yet. Right now. Now you can take a load off, you know? Yeah. I know, right?